size of 2 water buckets. So it's fascinating to know about spring-fed streams and why they're so beautiful, clear, colorful, support wild fish. And I think the closer you get to the source of them, it's just kind of a bit more of a spiritual trip than anything else, in my view. Let me see if I got here. So the first thing to recognize is there are less predictable flows. So I know some of you folks just went to the talk, some tailwater streams fed by a dam. Of course, you can go on and you can pretty much predict with a dam release what the flow of that water is going to be for a long time. Because usually dams, besides generating power, are supporting a number of businesses downstream. Kayaking, tubing, guided fly fishing. So they work with the local communities to release flow at a predictable level. Tailwaters are anything but, very unpredictable. So you have to look ahead of time and understand, is that river pushing any water at all before you go and just find a pile of rocks and a couple holes with a fish here and there. That's not the trip you want to take, but you can tell all that before you leave the house, and I'll show you a little bit how later on. Generally, it's a much more diverse biosystem, so a lot more insects, which means a lot more hatches, a lot more nymphs you can use, and often a lot more fish. Like you'll find trout, browns, brookies, rainbows, all in the same area, giving that biodiversity, all sourcing from that biodiversity. If you're fishing in tailwater, maybe the closest to the dam, the coldest water might be where brook trout are, or wild browns. As the water gets a little slightly warmer, you'll find more rainbows down in another section. So another way to tell if you want to fish rainbows or browns, you can also look at your proximity to a tailwater or a freestone you can expect to find at any time. Exception of the brook trout. Brook trout will be at your highest elevations, 4,000 or 5,000 feet above sea level. Rarely will find a non-stock brook trout below 4,000 feet. More often, greater changes in the gradient. That can be very important. So a small, beautiful freestone trout stream, you may climb a mile with an elevation where you're basically hand to foot. I do it all the time. You're just boulder grabbing and rocking and climbing just in a little tiny stream just to fish for half a day. Or on a tailwater stream, dam fed, because the flow is typically so fast and large and the volume of water is so big, generally the area is much flatter. It's just been gotten flatter over time with that kind of water. So that's important to know, both even from a safety standpoint. And often less likely to hold wild fish at lower elevations. So these freestone streams get warmed quickly. So as you move downstream, again, you're very likely to catch a smallmouth bass at the very end of that tailwater as you would a trout. For freestone streams, that's not going to happen as frequently. Well, so tailwater. So there's a couple pictures of the dam that I fish very often up in Virginia. This is what the river looks like below it. They're fed by dams or reservoirs, often supporting power generation and or lakes above. So a lot of activity, recreational activity up top as well. Again, I should have said earlier, any questions at any point, just stop and ask, please. The river is typically fed from below the lake's bottom. That's why the water gets so cold. Typically, this particular water rarely gets above 50 degrees all year round. I mean, in July and August, it can be the same 53 degrees as I can find it in December, because the temperature of this water is dominated by being fed by the bottom of that lake. You won't find that in a freestone stream. So that's very predictable. Again, produces a more dependable lower river temperature, gives a large abundant fish population, particularly wild fish. The colder the better, because most of them will die off if that water gets too warm in a freestone stream, where these fish will not die off. They'll live and produce all year. However, important safety considerations given the volatile flow. You want to know when that dam is going to release water, because it comes up quick. That stream I've been fishing for years, and I've been at it calf high, and all of a sudden I'm busy fishing and I'm focused on fishing, and all of a sudden it's here. And I'm 50 yards off the bank, and you got to haul your butt to get to land. So it's very important to follow the flow, and I'll show you again that in a few slides. Just take it one step at a time here. The rivers are scrubbed often by high water flow, so it makes it very slippery wading. So again, another reason why you want to be careful on a dam-fed water. It can be like ice. So if you're walking on boulders and you're used to it on a freestone stream, has a lot of algae on it, a lot of bug life, kind of crusty, much safer. You get on a piece of water like that, you can be upside down in a heartbeat. Less multiple hatches simultaneously. as food sources can be more scarce. So hatches more often follow each other. So if that makes sense, there's less food source than there is in a freestone stream. And with that force of water, it's continuing to push the food source away. And, okay, sorry. So, trout regulations and classifications. Now there's two different series of classifications that are important to know. I'll stay at a high level right here. This is a full presentation in itself, just this chart. But number one, class 1 water, you'll find it on all your apps, you'll find it on your state app. You're going to North Carolina, you get on the trout water site, where to fish, they'll go by classes. So if it's a class 1 stream, it's all wild fish. Very cold water, very predictable bugs, and it's going to be all wild. And the only indigenous fish actually in North America is the brook trout. All the other fish have been stocked, if you did know that. And if I'm correct, the brook trout is not even a trout. It's part of the salmonoid family. So if you didn't know that, I didn't know that till well into my life, that the brook trout's not a trout. But it isn't. It's the same fish family as the salmon, or I've heard even the bull trout out west is part of the salmon steelhead classification. So anyway, wild fish in class 1 waters. Class 2 kind of a combination, can support wild fish and stock fish. So delayed harvest streams, very common here. Class 3, very marginal, much more like, as likely to handle whole bass as it is trout, class 3. So again, that's something you can look at your house and decide what you want to fish. If you're looking for catch a lot of fish and you want to know that they're stocking, class 2 would be ideal. If you just want to catch wild fish, which is all I like to fish for, I'm just looking for a class 1 water. Much harder to fish, catch a lot less fish, generally smaller fish, but to me it's a lot more fun. Heck, a lot more challenging. So regulations, who is not familiar with these regulations? I just want to make sure I'm not, okay, good. So let me see how to, let's do this. So obviously wild is wild, right? So if a stream is designated wild trout, that's specifically it. That means they never, ever stock that stream. I have a picture later of a fish that will make an exception of fungi. And so delayed harvest is typically where they stock the stream, but it's flies only, or sometimes single hook lures, right? Single hook lure and flies. That's delayed harvest. Hatchery supported, I think usually, as an average, you can catch and keep 6 fish. That's kind of a common thing.
Delayed harvest though is normally catch and release, correct?
Correct, yeah. Catch it, put it back, don't take anything out. Here you're taking it out. But you can see some of the overlaps between catch and release and delayed harvest, but it's always clear down the bottom. I didn't blow it up that big, but it's always clear down the bottom what to expect. But again, just stepping back to the theme of the presentation, you're sitting at home, now you can decide what kind of fish you want to catch. You can go to the state website and see if it's a 1, 2, or 3. Then once you decide whether it's 1, 2, or 3, then you can start to look at the map of the stream, and on the map of the stream on any state's website, county website, you'll start to see these signs pop up right above the stream on the map, so you can already know if you're looking to take some fish back to the campsite and eat, you're not going to go here, you're not going to go here, right? You'll get a big ticket. So it's important to know these regulations. They don't mess around with them, and they shouldn't. Smaller. So here's a graphical flow of a freestone stream. So these can be, you can just type this into Google, ChatGPT, whatever you want, and just ask for the graphical flow of whatever river you fill in the blank of that stream. This one happens to be Brevard, North Carolina. If anybody's ever fished Brevard, the Davidson River outside Brevard, I know a lot of people here probably have. That's why I chose it. It's a freestone stream I've been fishing for over 30 years. That's the town of Brevard. Sorry, that blue is actually the gauge. So it shows you where the gauge is taken. So if you know you're gonna park and fish at Supper Park, just realize there's a bit of difference between the gauge, but it won't make a difference between day and night as far as fishing. But what I like to look at is the discharge, the cubic feet per second. I can guarantee what happened here is that a heavy rain the night before, right? So everybody can see that. But the most important fact is the bottom. This is on every chart as soon as you pull it up. So the median over the years, and I think this one is, I think it's been taken for 95 years, this chart, this system. So, you know, it's reliable numbers. The median's 118. So if I see even 120, I'll drive up to the Davis, even if I have to get up at 3:30. No, in the morning, drive up 4 hours, 7:30 in the stream. I already know before I left the house that it was gonna be, say, 120 and very fishable. But if I see something down in this neck of the woods, I'm gonna go back to bed. Because that means that all the trout are bunched up in holes. You'll see 30, 40 trout in a hole. They're all scared to death because anybody that's been fishing there the last couple of days at that low water has all fished that same hole and just pounded the head of these trout all day long. And they're not gonna eat anything, they'd rather starve. So these types of grass are extremely important for you to get familiar with. They're very easy to understand. There's usually a very good description underneath to tell you all about what everything means. You can pull up the numbers on this river in 5 different ways. I just happen to capture discharge because to me, it tells me a lot. The best time, I think Jerry and Peter would agree with, or Walter would agree. I get mostly in my younger days, maybe not so much now. If we saw rain in the forecast, we would drive up to Brevard about here and get in the water because this rising water flushes all the bugs and the fish will eat anything. 80 fish a day is easy if you fish on the up. Now, once it gets up above a certain height, of course, then you're hanging onto a tree, which I've done, just casting. But the best time to fish is on the way up on the stream. If you see rain in the forecast, and particularly if water's been low, so they haven't been eating, that's prime time. So fishing on the downside, you might as well just can't go home because they have stuffed themselves on the upside. I have tried 100 times to fish this side after a rainfall on falling water or declining water, extremely difficult to fish. So don't pull your hair out, you can tell all this at home. Because the rain in the forecast will tell you how much rain, and if you look at how much rain that is, there's another chart to show you that much rain will produce X amount of water. So you know pretty much the day it's gonna start, and if it's gonna be a flood or just good, solid, strong water for a couple days. You pretty much have set the biggest parameters of your trip. Any questions on that?
I would like to add, I fish here with the barometric pressure.
Big
That's
factor.
what I use, and it's pretty good.
I agree completely. The only thing I have found is, certainly the day of is a huge factor, but it's very, forecasting barometric pressure the week before when you're trying to plan a trip.
Yeah.
I mean, even the weather isn't predictable as far as rain, but, barometric pressure is less predictable than any of the other factors, but.
Very true.
And salt water, even more so, it will affect them. I mean, redfish will just stop eating, tarpon, whatever. Trout, they're hungry enough, they'll still pick it, but.
Yeah, well, I use a meter here.
So do I. Use the
There's
same-
a couple other things.
I use the same one, yeah,
As
it's
long as
terrific.
that barometric.
So if you don't understand, there's like barometric pressure is high, it's like somebody sitting on your chest, is the way it was explained to me as a kid. If somebody's just sitting on your chest, you're not really hungry, you're not about to eat. If somebody's sitting on you, well, that's what a fish feels when the barometric pressure is high. Everything and all their organs are collapsed together. So the last thing they're interested in is eating.
Thank you.
First thing a fish always wants is security. So birds, barometric pressure, high water temperature, they're not even gonna consider food until they're safe. And then they might open their mouth. So, sorry.
How do you consider what the median is for barometric pressure as to what's high and what's low?
These websites will give you that. So when I dropped this down to do discharge cubic feet per second, there was 5 options on the legends I could have chosen. And one of the other options is barometric pressure. So you can relate the barometric pressure to the flow.
Okay.
And then hence to the quality of fishing to expect. So with the tailwater, you can see this is right, so the dam is dropping water, all of a sudden they've generated enough, stored enough power, they kick it down, turn the generators off to save a little bit of money. All the guys that are doing fishing start screaming and yelling, the kayak people, everybody goes crazy downstream because the water's dropping. And then so they decide to generate more power and run it again. So that's the typical cycle of a tailwater. And again, you'll hear the horn. They always blow the horn when they release it. You can hear the horn from miles. If you hear that horn, best thing to do is get out of the water because it comes unbelievably fast. Till the first time you've experienced it, when you're dumb enough like me to ignore the horn and stay there and try and catch one more fish, and all of a sudden that water's ready to knock you down. It's important to know, particularly the closer you are to the dam.
Well, and if you're fishing the Saluda over by Columbia, you can actually go out to Dominion Energy and they will send you a text or a phone message telling you they're increasing or decreasing the flow, at the river.
Yeah, people are really, really cooperative, because they're all part of the community.
Tuck River, instead of just fishing, will do the same thing for you.
Yeah.
So you contact the people in that area, and they'll tell you when the release on the dam is coming. And it's on their website too.
I looked at the Tuck one when you guys were there last week or the week before,
Last week.
and, you know, got the same typical kind of grant. Your water was relatively low, if I remember what I saw, was
Yep.
relatively low. Could actually probably wade it off the banks, where a lot of times on the Tuck, you wouldn't even stand, think to put the foot in it up here, because you'd just be wet, swept away.
Well, when you think about the Tuck, when all of that devastation happened, the big storm in North Carolina, the western part of North Carolina was affected by a lot of rain, but not a lot of the damage that happened in the eastern part. But the Tuck, when we were over there last week, I think the flow was somewhere about 880 to 1,000 cubic feet per second. During that big storm, it was 33,000 cubic feet per second.
Yeah. In fact, if you go back a slide, Walter, I should have mentioned, that was one of the things I wanted to. So this is Brevard, of course, and if you look at the high of 2013, this 882 feet, if anybody goes to Brevard and fishes the Davidson, that 882 is what actually took the tarmac and rolled it up and emptied the parking lot and emptied all the fish out of the hatchery at 813 in 2013. So if you go up there today, of course, with Helene, there's nothing left at all. The river isn't even there, it doesn't flow in the same location. The hatchery's gone. The hatchery supported 70% of North Carolina's trout. It won't be back operating for 3 years at full capacity. So North Carolina took a heavy, heavy blow in its trout fishery. So that's why I stopped it at this particular date, because you can imagine it was 8,000 for Helene. I mean, there was just nothing left, even the size of the mountains are gone.
Well, if I may interject, we were up there fishing and we get to the Davidson and the flow was about 82 cubic feet per second. And I walked up to this one pool and the fish saw me and scattered, so I went and fished someplace else, came back to that pool, crawled up to the edge and ended up catching 8 fish in there. And it started raining that afternoon. Next morning we came back and the flow had gone up to from 82 to about 140. Rained all day. When we left, it was up at about 260, and we said, well, if it stops raining tonight, we can go back and fish in the morning. It rained all night long. In the morning it was about 1,600 cubic feet per second, so we drove home.
Yeah. So you can just look at the phone in your hotel room and know. But, yeah,
And where he's talking about they were, when he said it was 882, it literally peeled the pavement off the ground. There's a stone bridge there was damaged. It's been there for 100 years in that same spot. It got damaged bad right there. Ready?
Yeah, please. You can go to the next one. Oh, wait, just go back up there for a second. So this is a good example of the tailwater as far as, I'm going up here the week of the 28th, in a couple weeks. And the first 10 miles from the dam is all wild fish. So that's the water I told you doesn't change 50 degrees all year round. The second 10 will fish, it'll be delayed harvest, so it'll be stocked in wild trout combination. And then the third and last, I go in the summertime and it's just smallmouth bass. And actually, if you go down to the very bottom, you can get striped bass that'll come all the way up from the Cape. So this is a river, the Smith River in Virginia, where you can catch wild trout all the way down to striped bass in the same week, just slowly, day by day, going downstream towards the coast. Okay, Walter. Now, a little bit about transitional waters, this delayed harvest and wild. I wanted to give you a couple pictures. So this is one of the things to look at if you're curious when you catch a fish. Is it wild or was it stocked? You can see the damage done to the fins on this fish, right? It's almost worn off the top here, half worn off the bottom. That's a fish that's been in a hatchery, that's been bumping against other trout, fighting, rubbing against the concrete runways at a hatchery, if you've ever seen them. So that way you can tell the stocked fish pretty much close to 100%. Now, when if they survive the summer and they go into the next winter and into the next winter, then they start to grow some fins back. That's when it's a little harder. But a wild fish is obviously very obvious, not just from the colors, but from the red spotting here on the tail. You know you caught yourself a beautiful wild brown. That's been in that water a long time, generationally. And what us guys have found many times, right where DH meets wild, you get a combination of both fish, and it's just fun. You never know what you've hooked, whether it's wild or a stock fish. They're all beautiful, but it's fun to try and guess. Walter?
What did DH stand for?
Delayed harvest.
Oh.
So that's one of the classifications. So delayed harvest is they stock the water, and you can't take any fish out, and you can only use flies or a single hook lure. This one here, my son caught. So we took a picture. We obviously took this picture and showed it to the DNR, local DNR agent, and he said he immediately knew that species of this particular trout was stocked by the Germans by rail in the early 1800s.
Oh, wow.
They brought them from Portland, Oregon, all the way across the country when they moved to this part of Virginia and stocked that stream. So this fish is about 150 years old generationally. They're just beautiful. That's these Virginia fish I was telling you about. Just spectacular. And that's just really cold water all year. But he probably caught 60 fish that day and some monsters, but this little tiny thing was certainly my son's favorite fish. I can see why. Now, technologies, another thing. This wasn't available probably 10 years ago or whatever, I'm just guessing, but this is the one that I have on my phone. A friend of mine, I was born and raised up in Pennsylvania, Valley Forge, and a friend of mine's son, who's a AI young guy at Lehigh University, developed this app about 5 years ago called DIY. I think it's $9.99 a year. You get plenty of free ones now, but this was back then, so I just stuck with them. But what's beautiful is this is when you open up the window on your phone, you know, every blue dot there is a trout stream, right? And so then you can go into the selection box, and if I select river, and I select in Georgia, and I select I want to walk in access, not just float, I just want to be able to step in the water. There's even a camping one now, and I want to fish for trout only. And you hit that, and you say show locations. I did it for Helen, Georgia, where I know a lot of you have fished with this crowd. So that's Helen. Pete and I went to Duke's Creek last week or the week before. So I pulled that up. And so in other words, this is where, what's the other one? Smith Falls.
Smith
Duke
Creek.
Smith Creek. So obviously we could have fished 15 streams in a week if we wanted, morning and afternoon, just switching up constantly. This is a great way to just blow that up and figure out where to go. And then once you click on that dot, up will come, when I clicked on Smith Call, up comes Duke's Creek, and it gives me all the information on that particular piece of water that we looked at earlier. It'll show you the gauge, the stream flow, it'll give you a weather report, it'll now give you navigation from your home, you just punch it, directions are up and running. And a new one that I didn't put in here, because I took this picture 8 weeks ago, the young man that manages this just put in a comment section, just to stay ahead, because I should say most states now have adopted this technology. See, wherever state you're going to, now you can go for free on their trout website and pull this up. So these guys who own these apps are obviously trying to stay ahead and offer a little bit additional value as much as they can as they keep moving further and further. Well, now the new comment section is I can actually write down the day I fished, where I fished, I can spot it, and get the coordinates down, what I caught, how many, what type, what I was using, and keep that in my comment section. The thing is, so can every other user of this app. And if they check off the box private and make it public, I can go before I even go to the stream if I didn't know Duke's Creek and read other people's commentary. Say I'm going April 28th. I can dial in April 28th and look at anybody that's ever made their comments public on April 28th on Duke's Creek, get what I used to get, but also now get, oh, that's the month of March Browns, or the week of March Browns. And they're typically starting upstream at such and such a spot. So these things are getting so fine-tuned versus just grabbing a rod and walking out of your house as we did when we were younger. It's changed the world, but it is a lot of fun.
I was in a nationwide call with Project Healing Waters the other night. Excuse me. They've come up with another arrangement with the company that does on water.
Very simple.
There was a lot of shortcomings the last time they offered that, and they're supposed to, within the next month and a half to 2 months, come out to Project Healing Waters participants, giving them free access to the app On Water.
Be fantastic. Yeah, by next year, I'm sure there'll be so many of these that are free and just as valuable. I don't know what poor Ken's gonna do, but probably
Once
fill
we
up
get
the
word,
business.
we'll send it out to everybody.
Yeah.
for the-
We're not sure if they're gonna not just use the national database and send it to all of the participants directly. We're not sure how that's gonna happen yet, but when we get more info, we will get it out to y'all.
Don't get your hopes up, it's not for saltwater. Saltwater folks don't do this. The guys all
It's all
talk, but
secrets,
nobody else,
yeah.
that's right. I'd love to punch in where the permit at, and what are they eating today? It ain't gonna happen, I still have to do that the old fashioned way to get a permit. So state DNR pages are adopting these technologies, as I mentioned. These blue streams are gonna be your class 1. So you'll always hear people talk about, there's a lot of blue water up there, blue stream water. That is some gorgeous, mostly wild fish. This is Looking Glass Falls, I can tell just by looking at it. Avery Creek, all above the Davidson. So, again, this is the North Carolina site. So as I mentioned, it's as good as my app except this new commentary section. Otherwise, I'll just probably be using this in the future.
Well, you can sign up for, say, the Georgia DNR, and they will send you a report every time they stock and what areas, what streams, and in what counties they've stocked. And that normally comes out at least once a month, sometimes twice a month.
Yeah.
And White County, Smith Creek is almost on every planting.
South Carolina has it where they stop in the upstate. In South Carolina, we really look at 4 counties, and that's Oconee, Pickens, Greenville, and part of maybe Spartanburg County is the main place we have trout in the state. Otherwise, it's anything above Greenville, up along the border of North Carolina is good up there. And the Davison's easy to get to, I promise you, it's just a quick ride up there.
What does the red lines mean?
The red line, I believe, has stocked string.
Oh.
So there's stocked fish in there. Blue is not, that's just wild fish.
Gotcha.
I had to put this in here. You like this?
I love it.
It is so simple, but if you ever wanna see somebody cry, go fishing with somebody that breaks their boot strap lace. The first morning you're going fishing and you're about 10 miles from a store, 20 miles from a store that has boot laces, and most of them don't even carry them anymore, so. I've had, in fact, these would probably fall apart if I ever take them out, because they've been in my boot bag since I first broke a set of laces about 15 years ago. And right along in there is the water leak repair, especially these days, because you can get, these days you can, wet just came on, knock off the water and put a patch on and you're good to go. The old days it was turn them inside out, find it with a flashlight, scrape it, rub it off, and use crazy glue, 2-part epoxies. Now you just stick on some Gorilla Glue and go. But highly recommend putting those 2 in your fly bag and don't ever take them out, because it can ruin a trip before you get started. Because you always find the waiter leak the next time you go fishing, right? There's always that last thorn bush that you got to walk through coming off the stream. You're all excited about a great day. You didn't realize you punched a hole until the next time you take them out.
Greg introduced Peter and I into a new wader, and they're wader trousers, wader pants, as opposed to full-fledged waders. They're much more comfortable, a lot easier to get on, a lot easier
I have a
to,
picture of it.
oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I got you. I'm glad you mentioned it. I'm glad you also found it valuable.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah, so this is the brown ones. I didn't really but, what, was that? Okay. So yeah, so these come right up about here. So they just snap on, you can make them nice and tight. Obviously, if you need to take a leak, use Mother Nature, it's a lot easier than taking the vest and taking the waders off. They're super lightweight too. And what I like is because of the belt, easy belt access, which sits up here, I've now bought a couple of accessories. This is a rod holder. So my rod will just pop right into my side if I wanna change flies. And so I'm dealing with that, and it's not putting the rod, dropping it in the stream, laying it on a rock, coming out of the water. I can stay exactly where I am without leaving and just stick the rod here and pull it and whatever, move my indicator, put on some new flies. And on the other side of me here is my net holder. So it's in the same belt now, so you screw this green part in, and it just slides in and slides out like a gun in and out of a holster. So what I really like the fact is I don't have to get out of the water to do anything all day long if I just wanna wait. Everything's by my side, nice and light, nothing hanging off my shoulders. You guys are all too young, but I don't like anything more hanging on my shoulders and my neck all day. I don't do float trips, I only wade, so this has really changed my life. It's probably been 8 years now. Fantastic. What I wear is a small front chest pack, so it goes just below the belt of this, and this is in the, it's on the slide, so it slides right over the rod holder and slides back and forth as I need it. So I keep it nice and lightweight. This year, my goal in 2025, which I'm going to Virginia with next week, is this is all I'm using. So no more nothing. I'm bringing 6 fly. One of the fly, you guys have not met him, but a good friend of Peter Colin and I's for the last 30 years. The guy uses one fly, 4 or 5 different sizes. Has caught more trout than anybody I've ever met in my life. Because he only uses one, and his confidence level is through the roof on that fly. And it's a dry fly, and he knows how to fish it. So it's even, you would think, even harder with a dry fly. And we have fished with him, and he catches 2x what we catch all the time. And we always kid him about it, and he just said it's all about confidence. And there we are, all tied our double droppers all day, switching flies, and this fella's using one fly. All again, he changed the size. Size and shape, it's all he said he cares about. So that's what I'm gonna go to for.
What is that on the right again?
It's just a neck lanyard. Right, so what I'll do is I'll have my nippers here, scissors here, see where the tippet ring is, that holds your rings of tippet. I'm gonna have my flies there, and I'll show you in a minute how I'm gonna do that.
Name of the fly was what?
Hang on, everybody. Name of the what?
Name of the fly?
Oh, the one guy?
Yeah.
The mayfly that he uses? Oh my. It's an imitator, so it matches a lot of mayflies. I'm trying to remember which one it is. It's not the royal wolf, it's the,
Adams?
yes, Adams. Adams dry fly, 4 sizes. That's all he's ever used. He's probably 75, 76 years old, and I've known him since he was 30, and I never saw him without that fly. Only. Amazing. And I've always tried to get myself simpler, but it's about confidence. And I really go and trust myself to go to the river and do that. I'm getting closer as I start to simplify. We'll get there. So a couple things. I use a tippet ring exclusively when I fish. Does anybody not know what a tippet ring is? Okay. So these are 2 millimeter tiny rings that I actually take the end of my fly line, if you will, and I tie this little steel ring, 2 millimeters now, so the size of a little tiny split shot. And I tie my fly line to it, and then I tie my dropper. So here's 2 flies that I tie in the dropper section, 18 inches apart. So not 2 flies with 12 inches ahead of it. And I do that at home. So I put that in this dropper box, so I carry 12 or 14 flies, pre-tied, 2 flies in a dropper, so 16 inches apart, 2 knots with a 12-inch leader. I didn't used to do that 12-inch leader off the front. The reason I do it now is I have that 12-inch leader in here with a piece of Scotch tape. So when I go to the stream now, all day I only tie 1 knot. If I want to change flies, I tie 1 knot. I just tie it to the tippet ring. Everything else I tied at home, and everything above I tied at home. That's all I carry. Now when I used to buy the tippet rings, it comes with this little hook here, and every time I tried to get one off, I'd lose 4 in the water. So, you know these little, what's that green thing called, Walter? You use it as a catch to put on your vest.
Oh, the little spring or what?
Yeah, spring lanyard. They're a little tiny. I put my tippet rings, you probably can't see them here, but I put them on here now. So I can just take this little point off the end and wet my fingers, stick the tippet ring on, or I've gotten better at it now where I can take my fly line and put it through the tippet ring while it's on the pin, then unloose the pin, tie it, unloose the pin and take it off. So I haven't lost one now in 2 years, but in the very beginning, I used to drop more than a few and they come a dozen at a time, so. But this tippet ring system for me, again, I'm always looking at simplification, do everything at home, can spend an hour a day for a week ahead of time and prepare for a whole week's worth of tripping. And when I get in the water, I don't have to get out. When I get back to the hotel exhaust, I don't have to tie a thing. It's just in the box, all ready to go. I keep one of these empty and I put 12 flies spares on it. To say one fly like a Prince nymph was the working fit fly all day long. And I only have it on 2 other droppers. Well, I always make sure I have at least 4. One of these is buried with extras of what I'm most likely expecting to catch fish. So any questions on the tippet ring? They come in 4mm, the bigger size for saltwater. Haven't used some saltwater yet. They come in 2mm for fish, for trout and bass.
The other good thing about a tippet ring, if you're using, let's say, a 9-foot tapered leader, you can cut about 2 feet of that off. Put your tippet ring right there, and then put maybe fluorocarbon 6X, maybe 5X out, tie those flies on that one knot, and then as you're working back, when you get the tippet ring, that's where you're tying on your new things out of your little holder there, yellow and black holder.
And it's so much easier to tie a clinch knot on the 2 sides of the tippet ring than any of you that ever tried to tie a blood knot in December while you're standing out in the stream and you break it 5 times before you finally get the knot to hold. It's a miserable knot to tie, particularly in cold or rainy weather. Now it's tied at home in a nice, dry, warm room. I don't have to worry about it anymore. The other nice thing about it is when you attach your split shot to where the tippet ring is, it never moves because it's just steel on steel. I even leave now, when I tie the tippet ring on, I leave a piece of leader off the attachment and I'll put my split shot on the leader that's hanging off the tippet ring. So I can take the split shot on or off and not have to change any of my rig at all. There's nothing worse than having a perfect rig set up and you got too much split shot on all of a sudden. And the river is now lower, below where you're fishing, and you get hung up every cast. So you gotta sit on the river, take another 20 minutes, redo everything. I just now cut a little 1-inch section off that little tag that I cut off, just cut that off, change split shot, put it back on the tag, and I'm against fit. So again, it's all about time in the water. I'm just trying to maximize what I'm carrying and spend most of my time in the water. This is Walter, just back 1 second. This is what I'm moving to. When somebody asked me about the lanyard earlier, and what was that bar across? That is for your tippet. But what I'm now doing is these foam rollers, you can buy them on Amazon. See Jerry giving us a thumbs up. There's about $6.99 for a dozen of them. I bought the 2.5-inch ones, but the flies, the dropper system had a curl in always because it was a little too tight. So I went and bought 4-inch ones, and that's what I'm gonna take next week to Virginia. So 4-inch will fit perfectly on that little lanyard on my chest. It'll fit on anybody's tippet ring. It's not that you have to use the lanyard. But it's a real nice way to tie them. And you see I have a little piece of Scotch tape here, put 3 on, and I have 9 flies, 4 sets of droppers, 8 flies. Just right in front of me, ready to go.
For some of the new people, when we talk about the leader, most of our leaders are 9 foot long. And we talk about tippet. The tippet is the very end, about 2 feet up. Same fly, same leader, all the way down, it's 9 feet long, but I call that 2 feet tippet. So every time I tie a fly on, it's gonna take up 4 to 6 inches. After 3 flies, I'm already up to that tippet ring he's talking about. If I don't put that tippet ring, I gotta guess where it is. That tippet ring actually helps me find that spot and change it out before I'm already run out of fly line. I'm back now in my fly line back here, and I'm not where I wanna be. So that's what tippet is. It's just that last 24 inches pretty much of the fly line out of the 9 feet.
Russ, while you make a good point about the tippet. The reason tippet was invented is every time you change flies, you're cutting off 4 to 6 inches. If you change flies 2 or 3 times, your leader's now no good anymore. Because as you know, a leader for a fly line starts very thin to hold the flies, and it gets nice and thick and strong at the top to fight the fish. Well, if you keep cutting and cutting, this part of the line now is too thick to put a tiny fly on. So you have to use a whole new leader, and leaders are expensive. Or if you get a ring, a tippet ring, it can last you all season long, and you're just cutting 12 inches off and replacing the last 12 every time you go fishing. Then with a tippet ring, you have to do it maybe 10% of the time I used to do it. Yes, sir.
Does it affect the type of fly that you're using, the tippet, whether it's, is it designed to get closer to the bottom to fish?
Great question. Great question. I thought a lot about putting this in the presentation tonight, but I'm hopefully Walter will invite me back about how to fish on the river, because obviously I didn't want to take your whole night up. This is about preparation. But it's a great time to ask the question anyway. In fact, I think, did I put fluoro? Do I have another slide? I might have actually thought of it.
No, just one more slide.
Oh, yeah, here you go. Well, not exactly, but anyway. You would use fluoroliter.
Yeah.
So it's got fluorine in it, so it's heavier. The fly line's actually heavier, so its sink rate is much faster than regular nylon. Fly line is made out of, leader is made out of nylon, so it's got a certain sink rate. If the nylon has fluorine in it, it sinks a heck of a lot faster and gets to the bottom and stays there longer. And maybe the other part of your question is if you kept clipping a couple times, the line would be too thick to get through the head of the fly. So you won't be able to tie it on anyway. It gets thick pretty quick, particularly if you're using little tiny flies. This is what most of the good fishing.
Does it have any effect if you're fishing dry flies?
I'm sorry again, please?
Does it have any effect, detrimental effect in fishing dry flies?
With fluoroliter versus natural
No,
nylon?
no, with a tippet ring.
No, none.
I think that was kind of where his
So it's
question
another
was.
good, another good question about if you're using the fluoro line, it is heavier. That is makes it more challenging for the dry fly.
Oh, definitely.
So if you're throwing little tiny midges and you're using a heavier line, that little midge might drop a little bit below the surface and won't look as natural versus regular old nylon line, which is designed to float a dry fly. You use the fluoro if you definitely want to go to the bottom. Nothing's eating on top.
One-time dropper with fluoro.
Mhm.
Got something else after this, Walter? I can't remember. Oh, I guess it's thank you time. So thanks for listening, thanks for paying attention, thanks for some of your questions, and love to come back and talk to you about on the water sometime. Any questions?
Sounds good.
I do. If you're using the fluoro line, is that gonna help you prevent from using a lead shot on it?
No, it's not that heavy.
Okay, so.
Good
not
question,
that heavy.
yeah, not that heavy.
It's got a slow sink rate.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not measurable
But
even in your hand.
It's not gonna get me all the way to the bottom. It is gonna sink, but it's not gonna go all the way to the bottom real easy.
The only other time I use fluoro, if I'm dry fly fishing, is if I wanna go to like 7X fluoro, like the tiniest, to thinner than baby hair, because fluoro is much more clear than nylon. Nylon has a certain haze to it. Once you put the fluorine in it, it gives it complete clarity. So if the fish are eating dries and obviously they're looking up the whole time, they're much more likely to see nylon line floating by them, which looks unnatural. They're not likely to see a fluoro line. But if you use a heavier tippet fluoro, it's gonna sink and pull the dry down, so it's kind of a balance. But if they look spooky and you can get away with a small fly, I'll tie on a piece of tippet with fluoro, because it's only 24 inches roughly. And I'll take the risk of them not seeing anything and that it might not trip perfect.
Say another way to use that is you can, if you're getting to where the nylon, if you're getting so thin, you know, on the nylon, you gotta using like a 7 and 8X. I found that you can throw on like a 6X fluoro and get more weight but less visibility out as well.
That's a good point, yeah, yeah.
For some of the
Right.
new people, when they say 6X or 7X or 5X, fly line is 9 feet long. When I tie it onto my fishing fly line, I want it to be about the same size. So what happens, it tapers all the way down in what they call X numbers. So the manufacturer scrapes that down one time as 1X. He scrapes it the second time as 2X. The third time is 3X. When it gets down to 6X, that last 2 feet is like 1.6 pound test line. When you get down to 7 and 8X, you're down getting to 1 pound or under a pound test line because it's so thin. So you'll be fishing really tiny flies right there when you use that. 5X or 4X, I'm now getting up into 6 pound line or 7 pound line. so it will take a different fly. So when we study our fly lines, we'd have to look at what we're gonna fish today, to what kind of leader I'm gonna put on there, and what kind of tippet I'm gonna need to put my flies on. If I go out there taking a bunch of number 18s or 16 flies or 20 flies, if I got a number 20 fly, I'm gonna get down to my 6X to play with. One, so I can get in the hole of it. Two, because the bigger ones won't go through that little tiny fly. Right?
The other thing too, your leader will change. If you're gonna do streamer fishing, you're not gonna use necessarily a tapered leader. Peter builds his leaders, and it might start with 20-pound at the head that will go onto his fishing line, go down to 16-pound, go down to 8-pound, and it might only be 6.5 feet long. And there are two trains of thought in streamer fishing. Peter likes to throw that fly out there, let it sink, and then start stripping it in, and it will jump like that in the water every time you strip it. There's another thought process for streamer fishing, and that is throw it out there as soon as it hits the water, start stripping it in, and you can watch that fly as you're retrieving it, and you can see the fish gobble it, which is pretty exciting, I found out.
So any of you are new, the streamers are imitating a bait fish, not a hatching bug. So that's why it's a whole different practice. They think it's a small fish, so it's an extremely aggressive strike, and you can see them come out of nowhere. And that's why you can get away with thick line. You have to have thick line. You're gonna catch a huge 30-inch fish.
And you'll see us later on in the year, you'll see a class on how to make your own leaders up. We'll teach you how to do that. And you'll know how to go home and say, okay, I need this percentage of line at this level, and this percentage this area, this percentage at this level to make a leader to do it. A lot of times if I'm going brim fishing or bass fishing, I'll put 5 feet of 8-pound line and go fish. I'm not using a tapered leader. But it's the flies I'm throwing that I can do that with too.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Greg,
You're
appreciate
welcome,
it.
Jerry.
You can go ahead and turn that.
Okay.
Walter's gonna use the, tomorrow